I sat by the window in my small room at Ocean Breeze, staring at the gray waves rolling in over Fairhaven's coastline. The Oregon sky was heavy, like a wet blanket, and the sea churned restlessly below it. At 72, I'd grown used to days like this, days where the world seemed to move on without me. My name is Virginia Caldwell, though everyone calls me Ginny. Once, I was a librarian, surrounded by books and people who needed me. Now, I'm just an old woman in a nursing home, smoothing the frayed edges of a shawl that's seen better days. It's strange, isn't it, how you can live a full life, raise a child, love a husband, build a home, and still end up feeling invisible. I'd catch my reflection in the glass sometimes, and it wasn't the wrinkles or the silver hair that startled me. It was the way the world looked right through me. At the grocery store, cashiers would turn to younger customers, their smiles brighter, their questions sharper. Doctors spoke to me in that slow, condescending tone, as if age had dulled my mind along with my hearing. Even waiters, when I went out with the few friends I had left, would ask my companions what the lady wanted, as if I couldn't answer for myself. But the worst was Sarah, my daughter, my only child. Once, we were so close. I'd read her fairy tales at bedtime, braid her hair before school, cheer at her soccer games. Now, her calls came only on holidays, brief, perfunctory, like checking a box. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Did the flowers arrive? Or Merry Christmas. Mom, I'll try to visit soon. Soon never came. The flowers did, delivered by a courier who didn't know my name. Sarah lived just an hour away, in Portland, with her husband, James. But her visits to Ocean Breeze had dwindled, from once a month to once every few months, then barely at all. I'd become an item on her to-do list, wedged between pickup dry cleaning and book dentist appointment. I sighed, tracing a finger along the window pane, where rain slid down like tears. Ocean Breeze wasn't a bad place, mind you. The staff were kind enough, nurses like Jenny, with her messy bun and warm smile, or Tom, the receptionist who always slipped me an extra sugar packet for my tea. There were activities to fill the days, bingo on Wednesdays, a book club on Fridays, even a knitting circle I joined to keep my hands busy. But none of it filled the ache in my chest, the emptiness of a life that once felt so full. I thought of Walter, my husband. He'd been gone 5 years now, taken by a heart attack that came without warning. We'd lived in a cozy little house, just outside Fairhaven, its shelves overflowing with books we'd collected over 30 years of marriage. Every corner held a memory: the kitchen where we'd danced to old jazz records, the living room where we'd read to Sarah, the porch where we'd sip coffee and dream of traveling to Greece someday. After Walter died, that house became a museum of grief. Every creak of the floorboards, every scuff on the wall, reminded me of him. I held on for 3 years, clinging to those memories like a lifeline, until the silence grew too loud. The real estate agent, a brisk woman named Carol, had called it a charming fixer-upper with great bones. She was right. The house sold quickly to a young couple with a toddler and dreams of their own. I felt a pang of relief when the deal closed, but also a sharp stab of guilt, as if I'd betrayed Walter by letting go of our home. Sarah had offered to let me move in with her and James in Portland. "It's a big house, Mom," she'd said, her voice tight, her smile forced. I saw the way James's jaw tightened, the way Sarah's eyes flicked to him for approval. I knew I'd be a burden, so I chose Ocean Breeze instead, a middle-of-the-road nursing home. Close enough for visits but far enough to give them space. At least, that's what I told myself. For the first year, Sarah came regularly, every other weekend, with a box of my favorite lemon cookies. She'd talk about her job as a marketing consultant, the new car they'd bought, the trips she and James took to Napa or Seattle. James came less often, always impeccably dressed, always with an excuse to leave early: a client dinner, a golf game, a conference call. I didn't mind at first. I was just happy to see Sarah, to hear her laugh, to feel like I still mattered. But by the second year, her visits grew sporadic. By the third, they were down to once every couple of months, then just phone calls, distracted ones. "Sorry, Mom, I'm swamped at work. I'll call you next week." Next week became next month, then silence. I looked at the photos on my dresser. There was one of Walter and me, taken on our 25th anniversary, laughing by the ocean. His brown eyes sparkled, his arm around my waist. "You'd hate this place," I whispered to the photo. You always said you'd rather die in our garden than in a beige room with fluorescent lights. I smiled, but it hurt. Walter had been lucky, in a way. He'd gone quickly, spared the slow fade of old age. I wasn't so lucky. The other photos were of Sarah, her high school graduation, her wedding day, her first job. None recent, none with me. I'd stopped being part of her story, it seemed. I wasn't just invisible to the world. I was invisible to my own daughter. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Mrs. Caldwell. It was Jenny, her voice, soft but concerned. You missed breakfast again. Everything okay? I'm fine, dear, I said, not turning from the window. Just not hungry for oatmeal today. Jenny chuckled. Fair enough. But you'll come for lunch, right? Tom's been asking about you. Says he needs your help with the crossword. Tell Tom I'll be there, I said, managing a small smile. Jenny was one of the good ones, looked at me, not through me, but even her kindness couldn't fill the hole left by Sarah's absence. I turned back to the window, watching the waves crash against the shore, and wondered when I'd stopped being a mother and become a memory. The rain had stopped by mid-morning, leaving the air damp and cool. I was still by my window at Ocean Breeze, nursing a cup of tea that had gone cold, when a knock came at the door. Not Jenny's soft tap, but a sharper, more official one. Mrs. Caldwell. A woman's voice called. May I come in? I turned, curious. Yes, of course. The door opened, and a woman in her 50s stepped inside, dressed in a crisp navy suit, her auburn hair pulled back neatly. She carried a leather briefcase, and her smile was polite but practiced. I'm Diane Foster, she said, extending a hand. From Foster and Reed Law Firm. I'm here about Lillian Harper. Lillian Harper. The name hit me like a gust of wind, stirring memories I'd tucked away years ago. Lillian, my college friend, my confidant through late-night study, sessions and heartbreak, the one who'd stood by me when I married Walter. We'd been inseparable once, dreaming of changing careers and traveling the world. But a silly argument over a community garden project, of all things, had driven us apart 15 years ago. A few sharp words, a stubborn refusal to apologize, and then nothing, just silence. Is she? I couldn't finish the question, my heart sinking. Lawyers don't visit with good news. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Caldwell, Diane said gently, her eyes meeting mine. Lillian passed away 3 weeks ago, lung cancer. It was very quick. I sank back into my chair, the weight of it pressing against my ribs. Lillian, gone. I pictured her as she was, vibrant, with her wild curls and sharp tongue, always ready with a quip or a story. I hadn't known she was sick. I hadn't known anything at all. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered, more to myself than to Diane. She didn't want to burden you, Diane said, pulling a sealed envelope from her briefcase, but she left you this. And there's more. Lillian named you in her will. I stared at the envelope, trembling in my hands. My name was written in Lillian's familiar, elegant script. Virginia, Diane continued, her voice steady. Lillian left you $250,000 in cash. She was very clear about it being cash. It took us some time to arrange, but it's ready for you to claim. $250,000. The number felt unreal, like something from a dream. Lillian, after all these years, after all that silence, had left me a fortune. I opened the envelope, my fingers unsteady, and unfolded the letter. Inside. Dear Ginny, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I always had to have the last word, didn't I? I'm sorry for the years we lost over that foolish argument. It seems so small now, at the end. The money is for you to live, really live, not just get by. I spent my life saving for a future I didn't get. Don't make my mistake. Find your joy, Ginny. Find your freedom. Your sister in spirit. Lillian. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears blurring the ink. Lillian's words were like a hand reaching through time, pulling me back to the girl I'd been, full of hopes, full of dreams. I thought of the years we'd wasted, stubborn and proud, and the regret was a knot in my throat. But her gift, it was more than money. It was a chance to reclaim something I'd lost. Diane was still there, explaining paperwork, bank transfers, safe deposit boxes. But my mind was elsewhere. I thought of Sarah, my daughter, so distant now, her visits rare and her calls fleeting. Maybe this was our chance. Maybe I could use some of Lillian's gift to bridge the gap between us, to rebuild what time and neglect had eroded. I imagined Sarah's face lighting up the way it used to when I'd surprise her with her favorite chocolate cake. I imagined us talking, again, really talking, like we used to. I'd like to take the cash with me, I said, surprising myself with the decision. Diane raised an eyebrow but nodded. I'll arrange it. Where would you like it delivered? To my room here, I said. I'll figure out the rest. That night, I barely slept. Lillian's letter lay on my nightstand, her words echoing in my mind. Find your joy, Ginny. Find your freedom. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd go to Portland, to Sarah and James's house, unannounced. I'd bring the money, $250,000, tucked safely in the old suitcase Walter had rigged with a secret compartment for our long-ago trips. He'd called it our just-in-case plan, laughing as he showed me how to hide valuables. You never know, Ginny, he'd said, his eyes twinkling. I hadn't thought I'd need it, until now. I packed lightly, just a few clothes, my favorite scarf, and Lillian's letter. The money arrived the next day, delivered discreetly by Diane's firm, stacks of bills wrapped in plain paper. I slid them into the suitcase's hidden compartment, my hands steady despite the weight of what I was doing. I didn't tell Sarah I was coming. I wanted to see her face, her real reaction, not the one she'd prepare if I gave her warning. I wanted to believe we could be a family again. As the cab pulled away from Ocean Breeze, carrying me toward Portland, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Lillian's gift wasn't just for me. Maybe it was for Sarah, too, for us. I leaned back in the seat, clutching the suitcase handle, and watched Fairhaven fade behind me. For the first time in years, I felt alive, like I was stepping toward something new. I didn't know then how wrong I was, or how Lillian's letter would save me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The cab pulled up to Sarah and James's house in Portland, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over their sleek, modern home. It was all glass and steel, with a manicured lawn and a driveway lined with solar lights, beautiful, but cold, like a picture from one of those glossy magazines I used to flip through at the library. I paid the driver, my hands tight on the suitcase handle, and took a deep breath. This was it. My chance to reconnect with Sarah, to rebuild what we'd lost. I told myself Lillian's money could be a bridge, a way to bring us closer. I was a fool to think it would be that simple. Sarah opened the door before I could ring the bell, her face a mix of surprise and something else, irritation. Maybe. Mom, she said, her voice high and strained. What are you doing here? She was dressed in a tailored blazer and skirt, her blonde hair swept into a perfect bun, looking every bit the successful marketing consultant she'd become, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to surprise you, darling, I said, forcing a smile of my own. I hope it's not a bad time. No, of course not, she said quickly, stepping aside. Come in, James. Mom's here. James appeared from the living room, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, a glass of wine in his hand. He was all charm, broad smile, polished manners, the kind of man who could sell you anything. Ginny, what a treat, he said, leaning in for a brief hug that felt more like a pat. You should have called. We'd have rolled out the red carpet. I laughed, but it felt hollow. Oh, I didn't want to be any trouble. Just thought I'd drop by. See my favorite people. Sarah's eyes flicked to James, a quick, almost imperceptible glance, and I felt a pang of unease, but I pushed it aside. I was here for Sarah, for us. I followed them into the house, my suitcase heavy in my hand. The interior was as pristine as the outside, white walls, minimalist furniture, a chandelier that looked like it cost more than my old car. It didn't feel like a home, more like a showroom. They led me to the guest room upstairs, a stark space with a low bed and a single abstract painting on the wall. Make yourself at home, Mom, Sarah said, her voice bright but brittle. Dinner's almost ready. We ordered from that new Thai place down the street. You like Thai, right? Sounds lovely, I said, setting my suitcase by the bed. I didn't mention that Ocean Breeze stuck to meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Thai food was as foreign to me as this house. Sarah and James left me to freshen up, and I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling out of place. The suitcase sat by my feet, its secret compartment hiding Lillian's $250,000. I'd planned to tell Sarah about it tomorrow, over breakfast, when we could talk properly. I wanted to see her eyes light up, to hear her say we'd always be family. But something in her guarded smile made me hesitate. Dinner was a careful dance of small talk. Sarah asked about Ocean Breeze, but her questions felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. How's the book club, Mom? Still reading those mysteries? James chimed in with stories about his tech startup, tossing around words like venture capital and scalability that went over my head. I nodded, smiled, sipped my water, and tried to ignore the tension in the air. The food was spicy, unfamiliar, but I complimented it anyway. Sarah barely ate, pushing her noodles around her plate, while James refilled his wine glass twice. After dinner, they insisted I relax in the living room while they cleared the table. "You're our guest, Mom," James said, his smile too wide. I didn't argue. My knees ached from the stairs, and I was tired from the trip. The living room was as polished as the rest of the house: leather couches, a glass coffee table, a TV the size of a small car. On the mantel, there were photos: Sarah and James on a beach in Hawaii, at a charity gala, skiing in Aspen. Not one of me or Walter, not one of Sarah as a child. I picked up a design magazine from the table, pretending to read, but my ears caught the low hum of voices from the kitchen. At first, I tried not to listen. Eavesdropping wasn't my style, but Sarah's voice grew sharp, cutting through the hum of the dishwasher. "You could have warned me, James," she said. "I had plans tomorrow. Now I have to cancel." "She's your mother," James replied, his tone wary, like they'd had this fight before. What was I supposed to do? Tell her to stay in Fairhaven? "It's just inconvenient," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "You know how tight things are right now." "The bank called again today." I froze, the magazine forgotten in my lap. "The bank?" I leaned forward, straining to hear. "I'm handling it," James said, but he sounded defensive. "We'll figure it out. It's just a few late payments, a few." Sarah's voice rose, then softened, as if she remembered I was nearby. "We're 3 months behind on the mortgage, James, and the credit cards. Don't even get me started." I clutched the magazine tighter, my heart thudding. Money troubles. Sarah had never mentioned anything. Their house, their clothes, their vacations. They screamed wealth, or maybe they screamed debt. The conversation faded as they moved to another room, and I sat there, my mind racing. I told myself it was none of my business. Families have their struggles. Maybe I could help. Maybe Lillian's money could be their lifeline, not just mine. But a small, nagging voice, Walter's voice, maybe told me to wait, to watch, to listen. That night, I couldn't sleep. The guest room was too quiet, the bed too firm. I got up to unpack a few things, more to keep my hands busy than anything else. As I opened my suitcase, a folded piece of paper slipped out from the lining. I recognized Walter's handwriting instantly, blocky and precise, like the notes he used to leave on the fridge. My breath caught. I hadn't seen this before. When had he tucked it away? I unfolded it, my hands trembling. "Ginny, my love, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've found the suitcase's secret compartment. I hope you never need it, but I know you're strong enough to face anything. I need to warn you about Sarah. She's our girl, but she's always wanted more. But she's always wanted more than we could give, more than she could earn. Be careful, she loves you, but her ambition can blind her. Protect yourself, always. Forever yours, Walter." I read it again, then again, my chest tightening with every word. Walter had written this before his heart attack, years ago. How had he known? Sarah had been headstrong, yes, always chasing bigger dreams, a better job, a fancier car, a grander life. But to warn me like this, it shook me to my core. I folded the letter and tucked it into my pocket, my mind spinning. The next morning, I watched Sarah and James closely over breakfast. Sarah was all smiles, offering me pancakes and fresh coffee, asking about my plans with an enthusiasm that felt forced. James was quieter, checking his phone constantly, his jaw tight. I mentioned needing to run an errand at the bank, just to see their reaction. Sarah's fork paused midair, and James's eyes flicked up from his screen. "The bank," Sarah said, too casually. "What for, Mom?" "Oh, just to check on my account," I said, waving a hand. "Nothing urgent." They exchanged a glance, quick but loaded, and that nagging voice in my head grew louder. I spent the day wandering their house, noticing things I'd missed before. A stack of unopened bills on the kitchen counter, a voicemail from a collection agency that James deleted with a curse. Sarah's office was a shrine to her ambitions: design sketches, marketing plans, glossy brochures for her consulting business. but the desk was cluttered with overdue notices, loan agreements, a letter threatening foreclosure. My heart sank. They weren't just struggling, they were drowning. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed air, so I slipped downstairs to the patio, leaving my door ajar. That's when I heard them again, in James's study, their voices low but sharp. "We can't keep dodging the bank," Sarah said, her tone urgent. "They're giving us 30 days before they start foreclosure." "I'm trying, Sarah," James said, exasperated. "I asked for an advance at work, but it's not coming until next quarter." "Then we need another option," Sarah said, her voice cold, calculated. "Mom's here. She's got something. I know it. That suitcase, she never lets it out of her sight." My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. "What are you saying?" James asked, his tone wary. "I'm saying she sold the house years ago," Sarah said. "There's got to be money left. Maybe she's got savings, or something. We need to find out." "And then what?" James said. "Ask her for a loan." Sarah laughed, a short, bitter sound. "A loan? No, James. We convince her to change her will, make us the beneficiaries. She's 72. She doesn't need a fancy nursing home for long. We could move her to a state-run place. Cheaper, basic care. She'd be fine." I felt like I'd been slapped. A state-run nursing home. I'd visited one once, for a friend. The smell of bleach and neglect, the crowded rooms, the indifference of overworked staff. It was a place to survive, not live. And Sarah, my Sarah, was planning this. "Sarah, that's..." James started, but she cut him off. "Don't act shocked," she snapped. "You've seen the numbers. We're losing the house unless we do something. Mom's our way out. You talk to her, play the loving son-in-law. Tell her we're struggling, that we need her help. She wants to save us." There was a long pause. I waited, praying James would push back, would defend me. But when he spoke, his voice was quiet, resigned. "Okay, I'll talk to her tomorrow, but it feels wrong." "Wrong?" Sarah's voice was sharp. "What's wrong is us going bankrupt. She's got years left, 5, 10 at most. That money's better with us, for our future." I backed away, my heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. Walter's letter burned in my pocket. He'd seen it, Sarah's ambition, her willingness to cross lines. She wasn't just complicit. She was the one driving this. Not James. My daughter, the girl I'd raised, was plotting to strip me of my dignity, my freedom, for her own gain. I climbed the stairs, my knees aching, my mind racing. I had to protect myself, and Lillian's money. I had to get out. The house was silent, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of a clock. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, Walter's letter still crumpled in my pocket. Sarah's words echoing in my mind like a cruel refrain. She's 72. She doesn't need a fancy nursing home for long. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had reduced me to a number, a means to an end. I felt sick, my hands trembling as I gripped the suitcase handle. Lillian's money, $250,000, was still safe in its hidden compartment. But for how long? If Sarah was willing to go this far, what would stop her from searching my things, from pressuring me until I gave in? I wanted to storm into their room, to scream, to demand answers. "How could you do this, Sarah? After everything I've done for you?" But what good would that do? She'd deny it, or worse, she'd manipulate me with tears and apologies, the way she always had when she was younger. No, confrontation wouldn't save me. I had to protect myself, protect Lillian's gift. I had to leave. The decision came, like a wave, sudden and certain. I couldn't stay another night in this house, under the roof of people who saw me as a bank account instead of a mother. I glanced at the clock to 17 a.m. If I moved quickly, I could be gone before they woke up. I slipped on my comfortable shoes, the ones I wore for long walks at Ocean Breeze, and pulled on a cardigan. My hands moved with purpose, packing my few belongings into the suitcase. I checked the secret compartment one last time, feeling the weight of the cash inside. It was all there, untouched. Walter's foresight had saved me once again. I hesitated, wondering if I should leave a note. Part of me wanted to explain, to tell Sarah I'd heard everything, to let her know how deeply she'd hurt me. But a note would give her power to spin a story, to call and plead, to pull me back into her web. No, silence was better. Let her wonder, let her worry. I slipped my phone into my purse, along with Lillian's letter, and Walter's warning, and crept toward the door. The stairs were a challenge, each step creaking under my weight, my knees protesting with every movement. I held my breath, praying the noise wouldn't wake Sarah or James. The house felt like a stranger's now, its polished surfaces mocking me with their false perfection. I reached the front door and punched in the alarm code: Sarah's birthday, the same code she'd used since she was a teenager. It felt like a betrayal to use it, but it worked. The system beeped softly, disarming, and I stepped out into the cool Portland night. The air was sharp, smelling of rain and pine. I stood on the porch, clutching my suitcase, and looked back at the dark windows of Sarah's house. My daughter was in there, sleeping, plotting, my little girl, who I'd raised alone after Walter's death, who I'd sacrificed everything for: new clothes, vacations, my own dreams, so she could have a good life. I remembered the nights I stayed up, sewing her Halloween costumes, or the days I worked double shifts at the library to pay for her college applications. I'd given her everything, and this was how she repaid me. The pain was physical, a tightness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I pulled out my phone and opened the taxi app. My fingers shook as I booked a ride to the Portland bus station, the screen glowing in the darkness. Arriving in 12 minutes, it promised. I stepped into the shadow of a tree, hiding from the streetlights, and waited. The night was quiet, save for the occasional hum of a passing car. I thought of Walter, of his letter, of his warning. He'd seen Sarah's ambition long before I had. Why hadn't I listened? Why had I let love blind me? The taxi's headlights appeared, and I hurried to the curb, my suitcase bumping against my leg. The driver, a young man with a baseball cap, helped me load it into the trunk. Bus station, right? He asked, his voice kind but tired. Double quotes. Yes, please, I said, sliding into the back seat. I kept the suitcase close, resting it on my lap, like a shield. As we pulled away, I looked back one last time at Sarah and James's house. It loomed against the night sky, beautiful and empty, a monument to their greed. I felt no regret, only a strange clarity. I was leaving behind more than a house. I was leaving behind an illusion. The belief that family always meant love. The drive to the bus station was silent, the city streets dark and deserted. I thought of the years after Walter's death, when Sarah was just 16. Those were hard years. Grief hung over us like a fog, but we'd faced it together. Or so I thought. I'd worked extra hours, taken on night classes at the community college, anything to keep us afloat. When Sarah got into college, I cried with pride, thinking we'd made it through the worst. But somewhere along the way, she'd changed. Or maybe she'd always been this way, and I'd been too blind to see it. You okay back there? The driver asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I managed a small smile. Just a long night. He nodded, as if he understood. My grandma used to say nights like this make you stronger. Sounds cheesy, but she was usually right. Your grandma sounds like a wise woman, I said, my voice catching. I thought of Lillian's letter, her words about finding joy, finding freedom. Maybe this was what she meant: not just the money, but the courage to walk away, to choose myself. The bus station was nearly empty when we arrived, a cavernous space with flickering fluorescent lights. I paid the driver, adding a generous tip, and found a bench near the ticket counter. The cashier, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading, Linda, barely looked up from her magazine. Next bus to Fairhaven leaves at 4 a.m., she said, gets in around 7:30. That work? Yes, thank you, I said, handing over my credit card. I bought a ticket and settled onto a hard plastic seat, my suitcase between my knees. My phone buzzed. Sarah, calling, already. She must have noticed I was gone. I let it go to voicemail, then turned the phone off. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses, her lies. Not yet. I thought of Flo Peterson, my old friend from Fairhaven. Flo and I had met years ago at a library fundraiser, bonding over our love of poetry and strong coffee. She'd been widowed longer than me, living in a cozy cottage on the edge of town, always inviting me to visit. Anytime you need to escape that nursing home, Ginny, she'd say, her eyes crinkling. My guest room's waiting. I hadn't taken her up on it before, but now I needed her. I turned my phone back on, ignoring Sarah's missed calls, and texted Flo, I'll be in Fairhaven by 7:30 a.m. Can you meet me at the bus station? I need your help. I'll explain when I get there. Her reply came almost instantly, I'll be there. You okay? I typed back, not really, but I will be. As I waited for the bus The weight of the night settled over me. I was 72, running away from my daughter's house with a suitcase full of cash, fleeing a betrayal I never saw coming. It was absurd. And yet, it was real. I leaned back, closing my eyes, and let the hum of the station lull me. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of something new, not hope, not yet, but resolve. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Ginny Caldwell, and I was taking my life back. The bus rolled into Fairhaven just as the first light of dawn painted the sky a soft pink. I stepped off, my suitcase heavy in my hand, and there she was, Florence Flo Peterson, standing by the bus station's red brick entrance, her gray hair tucked into a loose braid, her smile as warm as ever. "Ginny," she called, hurrying over to take my bag. "You look like you've been through a war. Come here." I fell into her embrace, the scent of her lavender soap wrapping around me like a blanket. "Thank you, Flo," I whispered, my voice thick. I didn't know where else to go. "Don't you dare apologize," she said, pulling back to look at me, her eyes sharp but kind. "My car's right over there. Let's get you home, get some coffee in you, and you can tell me everything when you're ready." Flo's cottage was everything. Sarah's house wasn't cozy. Lived in, with mismatched furniture and a garden bursting with wildflowers. Over a breakfast of warm blueberry muffins and strong coffee, I poured out the story. Lillian's legacy, my hope to reconnect with Sarah, the overheard conversation, Walter's letter, and my midnight escape. Flo listened without interrupting, her face darkening when I got to Sarah's plan to rewrite my will and shunt me to a state-run nursing home. "That girl," she said when I finished, her voice low with anger. "After everything you've done for her, selfish, that's what she is." "It's not just her," I said, staring into my coffee. "James went along with it, but Sarah, she was the one pushing. Walter warned me, Flo, years ago, and I didn't see it." Flo reached across the table, her hand warm over mine. "You loved her, Ginny. Love makes us blind sometimes, but you're here now, and you're not alone." Those words stayed with me over the next few days. Flo's cottage became my sanctuary, a place to breathe, to think. She didn't press me for plans, just gave me space, a guest room with a quilt her mother had made, a view of the ocean, and endless cups of tea. But I knew I couldn't stay forever. Sarah had called Flo twice, asking if she'd seen me, her voice laced with worry that didn't quite ring true. I ignored her calls, her texts. "Mom, where are you? We're so worried. Please call." I wasn't ready to face her, not yet. On the third day, Flo called in reinforcements, Helen Brooks and Ruthie Gallagher, two friends from Ocean Breeze who'd become my lifeline there. Helen, a retired florist with a laugh like a bell, and Ruthie, a former nurse with a sharp wit, arrived with a plan. "You're not going back to Ocean Breeze," Helen said, her eyes bright. "I've got a friend at Coastal Haven, that fancy nursing home by the cliffs. It's got everything: private suites, a library, even a poetry club. You can afford it now, with Lillian's money." "Coastal Haven," I said, picturing the elegant building I'd driven past with Flo, its windows gleaming against the sea. "That place costs a fortune." "And you've got a fortune," Ruthie said, raising an eyebrow. "Use it, Ginny, for you, not for Sarah or her debts." They were right. Lillian's letter had said it. "Find your joy, Ginny. Find your freedom." So we made a plan. I'd moved to Coastal Haven, paying a year's rent up front to secure my independence. Half of Lillian's money would go into a bank account in my name, the rest split between a safe deposit box and a small stash in my new apartment. Flo drove me to Coastal Haven the next day, where a kind-eyed manager named Clara showed me around. The place was a dream: spacious rooms with ocean views, a dining hall with a chef's menu, a library stocked with classics. There was a painting studio, a garden with walking paths, even a weekly poetry club. "We want our residents to live, not just stay," Clara said, and I believed her. I signed the papers that afternoon, my hands steady for the first time in days. When we got back to Flo's, Helen and Ruthie were waiting with a bottle of sparkling cider. "Two new beginnings," Helen toasted, and we clinked glasses, laughing like schoolgirls. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a mother, a widow, or an old woman, but as Ginny Caldwell, a person with dreams worth chasing. Sarah called again, a week later, just as I was settling into Coastal Haven. My new apartment was small but perfect: a sunny living room, a cozy bedroom, a balcony overlooking the waves. I stared at her name on my phone, my thumb hovering over answer. "Flo," who'd come to help me unpack, nodded. You don't have to, but it might give you closure. I took a deep breath and answered, Sarah. Her voice was frantic, but it felt rehearsed. Oh, thank God. Where are you? We've been worried sick. I'm safe, I said, my tone even, and I know everything. Sarah, I heard you and James, the will, the state nursing home, all of it. There was a long silence. So long, I thought she'd hung up. Mom, it's not. You misunderstood, she stammered. We were just stressed. The bank's threatening to take the house. I'd never. You did, I cut in, my voice calm but firm. You said I didn't need a fancy nursing home, that I had 5, maybe 10 years left. You planned to take my money and throw me away. Mom, please, she said, her voice breaking. I was upset. I didn't mean it. We're in trouble, yes, but I'd never hurt you. You already have, I said, and the words felt like stones dropping into still water. I've moved, Sarah, to a new place, better than ocean breeze. I'm safe, and I'm done being your safety net. If you want to be in my life, you'll have to prove I can trust you. No money, no games. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. Can we talk in person? Maybe, I said, but not now. I need time. I hung up, my heart heavy but lighter than it had been in Portland. Over the next few months, Coastal Haven became my home, in a way Ocean Breeze never was. I joined the poetry club, led by a retired professor named Carl, whose love for Frost and Whitman rivaled mine. I took painting classes with Helen, laughing as we smeared watercolors across canvases. Ruthie taught me to make her famous lemon bars, and we'd sit on my balcony, swapping stories as the sun set over the ocean. Flo visited often, bringing her homemade jam and her sharp humor. These women, my friends, became my family, not by blood but by choice. Sarah called every week, as promised, but our talks were cautious, surface. She asked about my new life, but I kept my answers vague. A month later, she called, her voice shaking. Mom, we're selling the house. The bank's moving forward with foreclosure. I know I messed up, but can you help? Just a little, to get us through? No, Sarah, I said, my resolve firm. You need to figure this out. Sell the house, downsize, live within your means. I'm not your bank. She didn't call for 3 weeks after that. When she did, she told me she and James were separating. He's moving out, she said. I'm starting over, Mom. In Fairhaven, I want to be closer to you. I wanted to believe her, but Walter's letters still lingered in my mind. I told her to call me in a month, when I'd be back from a trip I'd planned with Flo, Helen, and Ruthie to Greece. The trip Walter and I had dreamed of. We're going to see Santorini, I said, a smile creeping into my voice. To live, not just exist. That's amazing, Mom, she said, and for once, she sounded genuine. But I wasn't ready to trust her, not yet. That evening, I sat on my balcony, the ocean stretching out before me, endless and alive. I thought of Lillian, of Walter, of the life I'd built from their gifts, their love, their warnings, their belief in me. I'd spent years thinking family was about blood, about duty, about sacrifice, but I'd been wrong. Family is about who sees you, who stays, who loves you for who you are, not what you can give. Flo, Helen, Ruthie, they were my family now, and I was Ginny Caldwell, 72, free, and finally visible. As the waves whispered below, I realized something else. Life doesn't end at 72, or 80, or beyond. It's never too late to choose yourself, to chase joy, to build a home in your own heart. That's what Lillian gave me, what Walter protected me for. And no one, not even my own daughter, could take that away.